Lads, we're back.
Yep.
Hi, guys.
Still here.
How are you both?
Tired.
It's a crisp Sunday afternoon.
It is. I'm guessing you're tired because you stayed up watching UFC, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long match.
Yeah, it was. I don't even remember what time it finished, but I didn't go to bed right after, obviously.
You were just too hyped after McGregor got knocked out. You're like, what's going on here?
No, it was fun.
I always forget the main event is like always at 1 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like boxing, right?
Yeah.
I think it was on around like 12:30 when it started, but it was a lot of streams of it. People
no streams. No streams. Don't want Dana White listening. Because I guarantee you he listens to the 2-on-1 podcast,
I'm
obviously.
not saying we were listening to watching any streams. I'm just saying I saw a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Do people still play the UFC games? I always like those.
Yeah, they're fun.
Those are really fun.
I didn't get the latest one. I got the last one, the last one they put out, UFC 3, but I bought it when it was on sale on purpose. It was fun. It's fun beating the crap out of CPU.
If Dana White is listening, none of us have the game.
We will fight Conor McGregor for $5 million.
$20 million. I thought we agreed for $20 million.
I would do it for 10. Daniel would do it for 20. Alex would do it for 50.
I'll just do it for the sponsorship. UFC sponsoring the show.
Yeah.
Dedication. That is dedication right there. Okay. That is real dedication.
I like Conor because I haven't seen him for a while, and then in this because I guess I don't follow him on social media, but I liked he went with the Daniel haircut, the Mark Giordano haircut. I like it.
Yeah, the Daniel haircut.
Yeah.
He shaved his head. All right. Let's get into the hockey, and we should open up. Throughout the show, we're going to talk about the Leafs. We're going to talk about the Habs wrapping up great series against Western Conference teams. The Canadians probably have some of the most exciting games we've started to see in this season with the Canucks. The Leafs, on the other hand, boring games versus the Oilers.
The hell happened?
Yes, and the Caps, Sid 6-0, leaving Sportsnet. But we have to start off with the second biggest piece of news. Not that the Canadians are first in the league. We'll talk about that later. Unfortunately, though, they did not get Pierre-Luc Dubois. It might actually be a good thing. Instead, the Winnipeg Jets have acquired Pierre-Luc Dubois and a third-round pick in 2022. And Mike, I forgot to put my freaking computer on Do Not Disturb. God damn it. Anyway, the Jets acquired Dubois and a third in 2022 in exchange for Jack Roslovic, who signs a 2-year deal with the Blue Jackets, and the big piece, Patrick Laine, goes the other way, guys. Now, I see this trade two different ways, and we can get to the second part of it in a second. But first, is this not, Daniel, the definition of a trade that it is going to take a few years just to see who won it?
Yeah, I think so. What they kind of said were the Jets kind of really took a bit of a loss here in terms of what they gave up because Roslovic's already a known commodity along with Patrick Laine. But they were, I think it was James Myrtle who said, like, at this point, they already had their hands tied. They had to do something. They had to get this over with. And I think that for the return, it's pretty good. But in terms of how these two players are going to adjust to new environments, it's like what you said. It's a wait and see. We'll see how Laine kind of goes with John Tortorella in that new system, if he could be that guy. I know they have Max Domi, so they'll try to figure out some chemistry there. And then with Pierre-Luc Dubois, kind of in a way goes to a place he would want to go more preferably. Like, it's not a big city, but it is Canada. And he can play with some pretty skilled guys. I think that he's not going to be asked to be that guy anymore, but he could still develop into like a 1-2 punch. And I like that Paul Stastny is there to kind of give some security at the center position if Dubois moved to the left side.
You know what? Looking at really fit, we can talk about in a second. Alex, what I think about a lot in this trade is this could be a disaster for both teams in a couple of years because it's really Patrick Laine wanted to play with an elite centerman. And right now it is an unknown in Domi and Texier. And
is Domi even a center?
He is, yes.
Okay.
For them, but he was not getting a ton of ice time. Well, he's going to have to now.
Right.
But the contracts here, in a few years, this is legitimately a trade that come even looking at Dubois, looking at how he can sign an extension in Winnipeg starting in the summer. This trade is not going to go away for a while now. We always look at like Drew and Sergachev. We can be like, you can keep your eye on that for a couple years, but this trade, you can just kind of say, but at the front of it, you see a defenseman, you see a skilled forward. But this is seriously, we can look at this season however we want, but until these guys sign new deals with their teams.
Yeah. You're right. I think strictly on paper, if you want to look at it that way, I think you can make the argument that the Columbus Blue Jackets came out on top because I think at the moment they might have gotten the better player plus another player, right? They got Laine, who can score 30 goals in his sleep, plus Jack Roslovic. To be honest, I don't know much about Jack Roslovic, but he's an NHL player, right? Like, I don't necessarily think that's really a question. But I think the tides can really turn more for Winnipeg than they can for Columbus, because at the moment, what does Columbus have that Patrick Laine was looking for? Like, the one reason he wanted the move was because he wanted to play with a center, like you were saying, like, who's he been playing with? Stastny he played with Kevin Hayes. That didn't really work.
Andrew Cobb.
And Paul Maurice, for whatever reason, doesn't like to play him consistently with Mark Scheifele. In my opinion, he should. That's a different story. He goes to Columbus now, and he's playing with who? Max Domi or Alex Texier?
Yeah, it's probably gonna be Max Domi, but
sorry, I don't know if there's much of there's an improvement. I think Max Domi could be a better player or better fit for him than maybe other centers he's played with, but it's nowhere near the level of Mark Scheifele.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, were you about to say something?
No, I just was going to look at the Winnipeg side, but I can do it after.
No, go ahead. We can spend time on this.
With Dubois in Winnipeg, I think one of the reasons he wanted to leave obviously was to be in a bigger market. And I think he's done that. And I think when the trade happened, there was a lot on Twitter saying, well, he just went to the Ohio of Canada. But it's Canada. How many times have we talked about that on this podcast, where when you move from like Columbus to Winnipeg, it's a bigger market no matter what. Like,
watch a Jets game in the playoffs and you understand why it's a good market for a player to play in.
Right. Like, I think because the city, I guess, is small compared to the other cities in Canada, there's the misconception that it's not a bigger market, but they care about hockey. Mm-hmm. There is a bigger fan base in Winnipeg that cares about hockey.
You can put it as the market size itself is small, but the fan dedication is hardcore. If we're
right,
NHL
exactly.
Expansion.
And I think for Dubois, he leaves Columbus, where was he playing with the best players? Not necessarily. He goes to Winnipeg and he's going to play, let's say he plays on the second line. So it's Ehlers, Dubois, and let's even say Paul Stastny if Dubois is playing the wing when he arrives. But after this year, let's say Paul Stastny leaves and they think Cole Perfetti is ready. You're looking at the top six of Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler, Ehlers, Dubois, Perfetti. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a really good top six. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I think really slipped under everybody's eyes is that, do you know whose father is a coach in the AHL for the Manitoba Moose?
Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Mm-hmm. If we're looking at connections too, Jack Roslovic is a Columbus native. Apparently, Jarmo Kekalainen was talking to the media for the trade, and saying that apparently anytime the Jets have had a conversation with Columbus, they've asked about Jack Roslovic. So if we go on the assumption that Columbus and Laine can have a long-term relationship here, Daniel, do they need the centerman? Yeah, but if there are, let's say Roslovic turns himself into a legit top 6 center, he'll have a top 6 opportunity in Columbus. They do need goal scoring. They have always have, and they do in this trade acquire the guy who I think I predicted him to win the Richard this year, and honestly, every year it was a bet to get 40, 50 goals.
I think with what Columbus has, and like Alex said, what they have this year, because we don't know how the contract negotiations are going to go, that they have that prolific scorer, something to really replace arguably Artemi Panarin's production this season, because with what the system they had going this year, I didn't think that they were going to be able to kind of sustain things with Pierre-Luc Dubois' situation. And the fact that they were able to get Jack Roslovic as well, it's just, I think it's going to work well for them in a way that he did sign his extension. And, this is a guy that, two things, he's hungry, he wants to play, he's going to get top 6 minutes. But at the same time, I know it's going to take a bit of time with quarantine and him missing all of training camp. But with what Columbus is kind of given, I'm kind of apprehensive aside from the goal scoring kind of thing, because Laine is not known as a premier back checker. Yeah, and we have the Tortorella situation going right now. I know we're going to comment on that further, but it's just another thing for Columbus where it's the same theme I feel like I've always been seeing with them is, you had the Rick Nash, and that guy had an iron will of patience with that team before he got traded, and then you had other guys coming in, Jeff Carter, you had Marian Gaborik, you had like Panarin, Duchesne, all these guys that you kind of come in and try to commit some long-term plan to them, but they never seem to stay no matter what. Even when Columbus either gets these trades or they get those draft picks that eventually develop like Dubois, and it just is something I see now where what can you do when these guys don't want to stay, or you could give these extensions to guys like Savard or Atkinson or Bjorkstrand, but you're not able to keep the top talent around, and it just makes me think about their defense right now. Where what are you selling to these guys?
I don't know, but I mean, right now, at least they have him. Like for now, he is an RFA at the end of the season, but right now, they do have him. And you know what? Dubois, in his interview with Ron McLean on Hockey Night in Canada, I want to get to some of the comments made from everyone involved: Cheveldayoff, Jets GM, Kekalainen GM in Columbus, and then the head coaches respectively here. First, I want to talk about Tortorella, because the clips I saw, he was so happy to have Laine, maybe because he finally realizes he has some offensive help. But I really, really want to talk about Paul Maurice, because there's a big parallel here. And it feels like so much has happened to their last show, because Dubois had his last game.
Yeah.
And it ended terribly. He had 3 minutes and
disaster.
50. Yeah, 3 minutes and 55 ice time. Didn't play in the second or third period after probably the worst shift I have ever seen in hockey. Just no effort, lazy. I mean, I'm sure he's probably embarrassed on that shift, or if he's not, he will be in a couple of years. It looks like both parties naturally, Columbus are happy to have Laine. Why wouldn't they be? Cheveldayoff was like, we're proud of Patrick. Paul Maurice was talking so much about the professionalism of Laine to start the year. And it was kind of the exact opposite of what happened with Dubois. His Laine came in. He only got to play one game and he got hurt, but it was a fantastic game. I think he had a pair of goals and 3 points, including the OT winner. And then Columbus had nothing to say about Pierre-Luc. And I don't think I blame them. And I think this is a time when I can ask both of you. And I'm going to ask Alex here, because you and I were talking on text about this. Mm-hmm. What did you make of not just Pierre-Luc Dubois' effort in that last shift, his last game in Columbus, but towards his decision to say, you know what, you're sitting for the rest of this game.
On that specific game, I think it was perfectly it was very fair that John Tortorella benched him. I guess when I first heard that he was benched, no one really knew what had happened. It wasn't until the clip actually came out.
Yes.
And after I saw the clip, I'm like, yeah, this is totally fair. Like that's unacceptable. I don't think there's any coach out there who wouldn't have done the same thing. The issue I had previous that specific game though is the whole mentality with John Tortorella saying, well, I only want to play the players that want to be here, which is fine, but he's your star, right? He is your star. Who else on that team is a star? Other forward wise, because I know, you got Jones and Werenski as well, but forward wise,
Domi,
Cam Atkinson. I don't know.
They aren't shiny players, but Domi is a star, and I don't think we talk about how good
in your heart, Adam.
But Domi is a star. I
Dom-
don't think, can't deny Domi is a star player.
Yeah, but so to go out, but the thing is, he's new, right? He's new, and he got benched. Didn't play the same game that Dubois, the game before the Dubois benching. There was a long period of time where both Dubois and Domi didn't play.
Last 5 minutes of the game, they didn't see the ice.
Right. So the thing with that is, well, Panarin and Bobrovsky didn't want to be there either. And I understand they're a different caliber of star, but when you have a team like Columbus, where it really isn't, you don't have many stars. You don't. It's just the reality at the moment up front. You're going to tell me you're not going to play them because they don't want to be there. Now you're going to take a stand. Kekalainen took an absolute risk in bringing in Matt Duchene and Ryan Dzingel. And I don't remember who he brought defense. Adam McQuaid. Mm-hmm. He took a risk bringing all those guys in there to make that run, which they did beat Tampa. But he didn't have to do that. Right? So that's the mentality I don't agree with. That you don't play your guys because they don't want to be there.
Daniel.
Yeah, it is so odd that other than Dubois, the amount of times we've actually talked about Columbus the last few months, because they were that team for so long for me that I kind of felt like, yeah, they got a good player. They'll see what they can do with it. But they always have those guys that they kind of end up re-signing, like a Cam Atkinson. And the way they've kind of handled things where, like what Alex said, they don't have a lot of top end talent, and then they don't play Dubois, where even in the NBA, if a player, like I'm going to use the NBA for another example, even if a guy says he wants a trade request, like James Harden still played. And I think arguably that was a bigger case. But with Pierre-Luc Dubois, it's just, it is an odd thing because coming out of the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, he was, touted as the next Jonathan Taves in terms of his two-way play, in terms of his leadership and demeanor as well. And that is something that they spoke highly of when he was drafted. And then for this thing to kind of fall out, it's just, I don't know which side was wrong, which side was right. We don't know what was kind of said, in the locker room, what was going to say, but what was said by upper management. But like, I agree. Like, if you were going to do something about this, if Columbus was thinking, let's try to remedy this, because there's been a lot of trade rumors that have been remedied within the organization, I'd figure you'd play him. But again, he did play, and then that last shift, I don't know what happened there, because that was horrible to watch. But I guess I would like to know maybe eventually what more of the details were, and knowing hockey, I'm not sure we are going to know it.
Yeah.
There's definitely something we're missing. And that was something Adam and I were talking about a couple nights ago. Like, there's something we're missing here that we don't know.
I wonder that, and I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't watched the Columbus game this season. I'm not even going to claim that I have. Just, I wonder, because Panarin and Bobrovsky, it appeared they never stopped playing. You know what I mean? But there was the one incident that Bobrovsky had gotten pulled and he had left the bench. He got suspended internally for it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the start of this season, and I believe what we imagine that Pierre-Luc Dubois has never on the ice been higher after the playoffs. And I wonder in those early games that there was not nearly as bad as that last shift against the Lightning, but if there was that oomph missing from Pierre-Luc Dubois, I wonder if that is why Torts made the decision. Mm-hmm. Again, I can't say if that was it, but I'm just trying to play devil's advocate there.
Yeah. It's a possibility.
Yeah. And I mean, credit to Columbus because they came out after that game and they beat Tampa yesterday. They lost in overtime in the game itself, but pulling out 3 of 4 points against the Stanley Cup champions, a team that they have been, by the way, battling with the past couple of years. Incredible.
Which is odd. I don't know. It's just odd to me.
Yeah.
That's a rivalry to think about in hockey.
Right. You know what my favorite rivalry in the league is right now? What? The perceived Russian hatred between the Capitals and the NHL right now. So for those of you who don't know, the Washington Capitals are currently without 4 very important players. They've lost Alexander Ovechkin, may have heard of him, their best player in franchise history.
Is he good?
He's pretty good. Ilya Samsonov, their starting goalie. Evgeny Kuznetsov, arguably their best centerman. And probably the MVP of their playoff run, even though Ovechkin won the Conn Smythe. And Dmitry Orlov, a defenseman that feels like we never talk about, but is so important to that
He's just so stable. He's just always there.
So a top 6 centerman, their 50-goal guy, their goalie, and the top 4 defenseman. Now, why? So they were added to the COVID protocol absence list after reportedly they broke the rules, basically. They were players are not allowed to be in their hotel rooms with each other. And apparently the 4 of them were hanging out without masks. And then as a result, the Capitals, not only are these guys apparently going to miss at least 4 games, and I believe the first or at least 1 or 2 have already happened. They won the first one in the shootout, I believe. The Caps are fined $100K. Ovechkin's wife put out a statement in both English and Russian, who was really very not happy about it.
So kind.
Yeah, and we'll get to Brad Marchand's stuff in a second here. But you know what, there was a clip of last night's Habs game, and it was Corey Perry and Jake Allen on the bench next to each other, and Corey Perry has the iPad, and he's looking at some player, right? And you see Jake Allen's there wearing a mask, and you're like, that's kind of weird, isn't it? First of all, it wasn't even over his nose. I was like, come on, Jake. But why is Jake Allen having to wear a mask? Apparently, Brendan Gallagher was talking about on the plane, the guys can't play cards together.
Why? Oh.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I get it, where people are saying, why can't these guys who are hanging out on the bench and that shoulder to shoulder when they're not wearing masks, why can't they hang out in the hotel room? These are the rules that these guys agreed to in return to play. And it's a little rich, and I would be mad if this was the Canadians, trust me, but it is a little rich that the moment you come public with some issues about it is once you have been caught.
Right.
And not before the season. Am I wrong in thinking that, guys?
No, that was my first thought too. It's the rule. This was my thought process. Do I agree with everything? No. That's it. There's a lot of people who don't agree with everything. It's just the reality. Am I following the rules? Yes. Because I don't want to get fined. Okay. I don't want to pay the fine. It's just, I don't want to pay it. Okay. They had the opportunity to opt out. Right? They all had the opportunity to opt out based on the rules that were given.
Can you imagine if Ovechkin opted out?
If they feel so strongly against these rules, they could have opted out. They could have. And not get paid. And actions have consequences. That's the action. That's the consequence.
They should have at least tried to negotiate it. I mean,
rules?
And Alex, you were saying this before the season started. There are rules, and if they don't follow them, they don't get to play. And
yeah. Mm-hmm. No, you're right. They could have negotiated. They could have negotiated the rules, I guess. But after they were finalized, right? After they were finalized and just before the season started, and they had the opportunity to opt out based on the rules that have all been agreed to by the PA and by the NHL.
You know what this reminds me of, and this might be a reference to last night, but I feel like this is round 2 of Ovechkin versus COVID protocols, because we talked about it during the bubble where, allegedly there was a partying in the bubble and the Capitals just did not care about what was going on. I feel like this is another thing that, he's getting antsy. The other players were getting antsy. And to be honest, it just, to me, felt that what they gave to the team, they were above said rules. That they felt that they could keep doing this thing throughout a weird season like this and still get away with it. And I know that he apologized, but it's just another instance where, you've gone through this already, man. Like, you know what to do. You know what the protocols are. You know what the rules are. Like, none of them are rookies. Elias Samsonov is not a rookie.
Ovechkin is the furthest thing from the rookie in the league, except for maybe Zdeno Chara.
And Joe Thornton.
And Joe Thornton. Patrick Marleau. This is what Brad Marchand actually had to say about the situation. I didn't know he had said this until I was looking some of the story stuff up online. Quote, I think the big thing is it's more of a respect thing, Marchand said. And by the way, this was to Boss Hockey Now. We all want to be able to play, and there's rules put in place for a reason. They're not hard to follow. We all know the consequences of breaking the rules, and we know what the rules are. So they brought that on themselves. We've all been told very heavily what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. So it is what it is on their side of things.
Before we move on, just one thing. Is Alex about to agree with Brad Marchand?
I mean, I think he puts it perfectly, really. They agreed to it.
He does. He does. He's right.
Yeah.
That's the only time I will ever agree with Brad Marchand. I hope you guys know this, okay? But yeah, no, he's right. Like, that's exactly what it is. I don't care whether you agree with it or not. Like, in terms of the rules, you agreed to play. And by agreeing to play, you agreed to follow the rules that were put in place. So if you decide to take action against those rules, there will be consequences for that. And this is the consequence. This is it.
Yes.
It's like the one guy who pees in the pool.
Now you're not allowed in the pool anymore.
Yeah, no one's allowed in the pool now.
You pissed
ruined
in the
for
pool.
everyone.
All right. Okay, let's talk about some. This is, I don't know if a lot of people are talking as much about this as I think they should be. NBCSN, aka where all the NHL's American games are broadcasts, will be shut down at the end of the year. Apparently, there has been word that the league could be getting all of their stuff moved to maybe like USA or stuff that apparently the league have been negotiating with their rights to maybe multiple platforms. But there has been so much talk over the past few years about this new US deal. And the guys who we all saw as the sort of front runner here is shutting down that main network, and you can promise, leaving space on USA as much as you want. But I gotta think this puts a massive sort of question mark in the air, doesn't it?
I don't know if it puts that big of a question mark because they want, from the start, this was from John Orend of Sports Business Daily. From the start, the NHL has made it clear that it wants to split its rights between at least 2 TV outlets. So NBC, the article says, NBC has told the NHL that it would carve out regular windows on its broadcast channel and USA Network. So I think right there you have USA Network. There's number 1, which is owned by NBC, I think. And then you have ESPN. Now, ESPN did lay off 300 people back in November.
And they hate
but
hockey.
and I guess they hate hockey, yeah. But I think they if ESPN gets part of the rights, I think it's really good. I think it's really good for the game. I know that's the perception, but they are really good. I heard they're really good at advertising their products. So I think the fact that NBCSN is shutting down is it great, but I don't think it's as bad as if they were just looking for one provider.
I guess first, it's weird with ESPN and hockey right now because I remember early 2000s, they always had those advertisers with it. They had the NHL games for them. I remember Jeremy Roenick was one of the covers. That was cool. And second, yeah, I think it is kind of a weird situation that's in, but like you said with the sponsorship, it gives the NHL possibly another outlet to get more money, to get more sponsorship, and that's been the theme this year where in this crazy time, how we're going to keep adding to the game, how are these teams going to stay afloat? And it may just be another thing that they have to just split this thing and just get other deals going here and there just to increase sponsorship, to increase more of the advertising.
Moving on to another bit of sports media news while we're on it. We'll go a little fast pace here. Sid Seixeiro of Tim and Sid, may have heard of him.
Who?
Is leaving Sportsnet for breakfast television in March, I believe.
Yeah.
I felt sad again after you said that. I already that's been marinating with me already for so long, but I don't know why that kind of hit me.
You were reading people's stuff on the show about one of this person. I don't remember who said it or who sent in the tweet, but it sort of explains Sid Seixeiro perfectly. You were my favorite person to hate. Because that was sort of the role. He goes on the Toronto network and he goes, Leafs are disappointment. Mitch Marner's a clone. He played his role perfectly in this market.
Yeah.
And in a time when they had lost Bob McCowan, well, they got rid of him for, money.
Whatever reasons.
Kyprios and Shannon. But I don't think people realize how big of a loss this really is for Sportsnet. And I'll send it around to you guys and maybe you can give me your favorite Sid Seixeiro moments. Because mine, without a question, I think it's a legendary piece of Canadian media. Knock, knock. Who's there? Go metal to the face. That's who.
Maybe we found Tim's new co-host.
I'll take
Adam
it.
Faluja, yeah.
I'll take it. How did you say my last name?
Faluja?
Faluja. Close enough.
Right.
Centeno.
I've been working on it.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, like watching Star Wars Clone Wars?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Battle of... Okay. All right. We're on Tim and Sid.
About Star Wars for the rest of the episode. I'm fine with it.
No. That'll be a special segment.
Okay.
Please, guys, if you're listening to this, vote if you want a special Star Wars segment from us. I don't know, go in the Bizarre Adventures category. But anyways, Alex, your favorite memory of Tim and Sid?
Or just Sid. Just Sid. Tim staying around.
Okay.
I don't know if I have a particular moment because there's so many, but like I have this one story that I think I found it so funny because it put for me, like I think before I got into journalism school, the whole perception was like, oh, these are like the biggest people, like they're not real people. Yeah. So I think I was going into grade 12 and I got to go downtown to the 590 building. I think this is when they had just a couple months before were put on TV at the same time as primetime sports was on radio. Mm-hmm. And so I was there to see how the behind the scenes for primetime sports. And I'm sitting outside at the desk as the producer's getting the stuff, getting the show ready. And Tim and Sid walk by. And I didn't clue in at first that it was them because I looked and then my mouth dropped and they just kept walking by. And the producer goes to me, yeah, we're not supposed to like them. And I thought but he didn't mean it. Like, obviously he was just joking, right? Because he produced primetime sports. There was competition, but I thought it was the funniest thing because I saw them and I'm like, oh, they're real people. Like, they're just not.
Like when we saw American Freedman.
Right. Like, they're like that same thing. Like, oh my God, like they're real people. They're not just our imagination. That was my favorite moment.
Damn.
For me, and again, I'm gonna do a big throwback here. But when I was really little, one thing I really liked to watch outside of, Sportsnet and TSN was the score. And for me, being that kid that always wanted to stay up late, watch wrestling, watch those, like, for me the score was the one channel at the time that always played the Western Conference games. So that was actually the way I was able to watch a lot of, like, at the time, the Phoenix Suns or like the Mighty Ducks. That was really the only way, but they were all 10:30 showings. But for me, it was just those segments with Tim and Sid where, like, that brash thing you wanted, like, they didn't wear the full suit, they weren't stiff, they didn't just give you analysis where, that is great, but sometimes when you're a kid you want more of that pizzazz in a way, you want more of that excitement. And that was kind of something that became my routine thing, is like seeing them on the score for those small segments, because it kind of went with the fact that how the score was, where they just gave you all the information all at once on the screen. But at the same time, they had a different scheduling of what other channels did, and that's what they kind of embodied. And when the Sportsnet acquired, like, Rogers acquired the score, I was actually kind of sad that they were gonna get rid of Tim and Sid, but I really liked that they were part of that deal, that they were able to continue, and they actually got a better time slot. They got their own TV show out of it, and it was just fun to watch. Like, I don't know, like, this is a really random cultural reference I have, but that whole thing about Sid being that bad guy, or not a bad guy, or like being that guy that people love to hate, it reminds me of Scarface. In a way, remember the restaurant scene where it's like, I'm the bad guy so you people could feel good about yourselves, kind of thing. It's like, I feel in this way where his hot takes are what fueled my passion of the Toronto teams, because they're like, no, Sid, this is how it is, but at the same time, I respect your opinion, but we're gonna have this reality going on.
The moment he quote tweets, sorry that someone quote tweets him and calls him an idiot, you're like, well, he got you.
Yeah, he got you.
Exactly.
It also speaks volumes to how not only he's perceived by fans and like other members of Sportsnet, but how he's actually seen by players and management. That Masai Ujiri, why they were talking to Norman Powell, comes on and sort of gives him like pulls his leg a bit with the whole, oh, you guys are screwed without each other, but like gives him a congrats, talk about how much he enjoys the show. That's mega.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes, just how great those guys are.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing, let's go on.
I was just gonna say, like, the one thing I liked about Tim and Sid before they were like on TV is, if you ever watched when they were on radio, Sportsnet would still have them have the video feed going. And like, even when it wasn't an official TV show, it was just radio with that video feed, it was still entertaining to watch. Like, there was something about watching them that's completely different than other ones. Like, they would show Hockey Central, then they'd show Tim and Sid, and then they do Primetime Sports. And I think you tuned into Primetime Sports to see Bob McCowan, just to see him with the sunglasses and all that. It's one thing to you tune into Tim and Sid, and they're animated. They're just, it's enjoyable to watch, and that's what made it different than, let's say, like Hockey Central, where the guys were just sitting there. Yeah, Kiprios and Doug McLean would get into an argument and it get animated, but it was different. It wasn't the same as Tim and Sid. Tim and Sid brought something different that the other ones necessarily didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And
track, by the way, with those two.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Opposites attract
Yeah.
with Tim and Sid.
Yes.
That's just what made them work so well together. And I'm fascinated to see what that lineup looks like next year.
Yeah.
Two things before we go about that.
Yep.
Sorry, Adam, did I interrupt you?
No, I'm done.
One thing, they've been inspirations to us. I think everyone came out with that story about they started off as interns and volunteers, and they kind of just went with their ideas. They just kept pitching their ideas. So big inspiration there. Second, I don't know, like I'm just gonna think like how is Sid's takes gonna be on breakfast television?
Yeah.
Like it's like hot take. I don't know, and then like does he like go off on something or does he stay in character? Because
this weather's 2 degrees too much. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But my mom said the same thing because she watches breakfast television sometimes, and I said to her, I go, yeah, I see that guy on TV. I go, he's going to be on breakfast television starting in March, and the next day, obviously, they introduced him on BT because it all came out, and she's like, I don't know. I'm like, give it a month. Just give it a month. When he's on, I think he's going to change a little bit because I think when it's sports, it's all he's very hot takey, but it's still his personality. That is his personality.
People are gonna miss his tweets. How are they gonna be like now?
Well, I think he'll still.
Yeah.
I think he'll still have.
We got you, but on other news around the city.
Maybe he'll make a Sid 60 BT account, and then there's the Sid 60 saying the Calder Cup doesn't matter.
Hey kids, snow day today. Just kidding. No.
I think he'll fit that. I think he'll fit that BT energy. I think a lot of people feel like he won't, but I think he will.
The best
be the fun uncle.
Yeah. The best member of BT since Adam Wilde. Okay. Well, fellas, we got 2 more things to talk about. We have the Leafs and we have the Habs, which in itself is not just 2 things. There's about 16 things between them. I say we start with Montreal, obviously, because they played last night, to wrap up a thrilling series against the Vancouver Canucks. And Montreal come out of not just that series, but their road trip to start the season. They don't play their first home game till next week or this week, depending if you think Sunday starts the week, which it does. They finish first in the league, the best goal differential, the highest scoring team in the league. 23 minor penalties in their last 5 games. But I mean, I don't think you can describe, you could not have written a better start to the season for the Montreal Canadiens.
No, I don't think you could have.
No.
They a 6-game point streak to start the year for Nick Suzuki, by the way, guys. He's arrived. He's the star already. There's
better than Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I think there's more of an offensive upside for Suzuki. I think there's always been this comparison that Suzuki's favorite player growing up was Patrice Bergeron, and he just plays the game the right way. This Suzuki, he's going to lead this team in scoring. I watch him and I think he has saved Jonathan Drouin's career. And I mean in the nicest way, but since they were put together, it's a different Jonathan Drouin, who has been one of the most important parts of this Canadiens team to start. By the way, from all the new additions from the offseason, I'm including Romanov in this. So Romanov, Edmondson, Allen, 11 goals so far, 17 points. 1 fight from Joel Edmondson, we'll talk about later. 2 wins in 2 games from Jake Allen.
Oh, Jake Allen played again.
He did, yes. He played one of the Edmonton games and one of the Twins games.
Our boy.
Making sure Carey Price definitely gets the rest he needs.
Right.
Mm-hmm. St. Louis is going to miss him.
Aren't they? I mean, I'm sure they would have loved to have someone safer than Binnington after that 8-0 loss, but
they had Ville Husso.
And
who?
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, the Canucks cannot defend. There was a point where they had actually tied the game 2-2 yesterday. And you can tell that there was pressure from the Canucks, but the way they were playing all game, that one bad push and an odd win rush was going to be the other way. And the Canadiens are not a team you can give that opportunity to. And that's how Montreal ended up taking the game over. But I mean, like the Ulevy stuff, we'll talk about Corey Perry in a second because Daniel, I know we do not have to talk about it. But just before we really go into Montreal, I mean, the Canucks, if Montreal had some discipline, I think they'd be undefeated. Because that first game against the Canucks, they had no right to win. Because the Canucks, forget about their depth up front. Their defense is such a mess. And Elias Patterson, guys, has not been Elias Patterson to start the season. And it is concerning for so many reasons.
Yeah, he's not looked good. And I think last episode I said, JT Miller coming in could change things. And at that point he had only played one game with the team, and now he's played two more. It could be this isn't his sophomore season, is it? This is his third season.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not a sophomore slump. Either way, it could be just a bad start. Like, I feel like we see all these teams coming out starting really hot, like Montreal, but we forgot there's a pandemic going on, and obviously things really aren't the same, right?
It's even more than this, because I think over the last few years, he's been at least 8 points through his first 6 games. After last night, I believe he only has an assist and a goal, and he has 0. There was this really, really funny moment. Sportsnet, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but he had hit the bar on a power play. And seconds after he had hit it, Sportsnet threw up a graphic saying that he doesn't have a point on the power play to start the season. Oh. And that has to be the bread and butter for that team. And it wasn't just offensively. I mean, he, on the line, had a horrible turnover that led to a Kotkaniemi breakaway. Fortunately, Braden Holtby makes the save, but
I think we underestimated the pieces that they lost and their significance to the team.
Oh boy, Chris Tanev. I think that guy has had a bit. Was definitely more of a loss than we thought. I thought, like, okay, whatever, they're losing him. I mean, Nate Schmidt will be fine, but the defensive side of things and like the locker room, sort of that you've lost in Tanev too.
Well, not even just Tanev, Stetcher, Markstrom. I know they only had Toffoli for a very short period, but with Toffoli on the team, it looked different.
Stetcher, apparently, Harman Dial was right. He's actually very good on like the 5-on-5, so the suppression of the shots, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I know they got Schmidt, but it was difficult to add anyone for that team because of the cap, and it's not going to get any easier.
I kind of agree with that. That the amount of pieces they lost at one time really did affect them. I thought that, like any team, has cap constraints. You're gonna kind of bet on the guys that you already have there, and it just hasn't translated to any success so far. And they're gonna have to need these guys to keep going because, like we talked about, that defense, like that Olli Juolevi play, that was like, that's something hard for me to watch. Not as a Canucks, like I'm not a Canucks fan, but I'm a fan of a guy doing his best to try to make it after so many injuries. I know he's public enemy number 1 now on the podcast, but Tyler Myers, for the cap hit he's given and for the role he's supposed to play, it's just not there. And it's just, again, another contract that's kind of looking like a Jay Beagle, Anton Roussel kind of situation, because he's not playing, he's playing in certain situations, but they're still putting him on third line. And that's embarrassing to see for a defense that if your name is not Quinn Hughes, then there's not really any premier names on that blue line. Mm-hmm. And yes, in terms of those forwards, you could talk about players that you haven't really noticed. And what comes to mind is Jake Virtanen. it's just been flat. It's been in the situation now where I think you put him where he's supposed to go now. I don't bet on him to be, a guy that was supposed to go in the top 10 anymore. He's a guy that put him in a good situation, like the third line, good scoring line, and it just hasn't been there. And if your top guys are not performing, if your depth's not performing, then I don't know what you're going to be hoping on, because for me, Braden Holtby has looked really shaky.
Yeah.
I thought the new environment would really help him, but this is still end of his, time at Washington, Braden Holtby.
They didn't help him out at all, though.
No.
There was no support for him there. There was sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying about Jake Virtanen. What they need to do what Calgary did with Sam Bennett, or what Sam Bennett did to become the current Sam Bennett he is. That's what Jake Virtanen has to do, because it seemed to have worked with Sam Bennett. Yes, he's not what Sam Bennett was drafted
fourth overall.
Is he turned out to be a fourth overall pick type player? Unfortunately not. But it's just, so you got to do it. Like, Jake Virtanen can be an NHL player. Like, he is an NHL player. Like, it's not even a question. But you got to change your game if it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And Niels Holander has been a bit of a surprise, but that's something going for the Canucks.
Yeah, another great rookie for them. If we're talking about just the dead cap situation, there is a play when Evans was busting down the ice, and it took Jay Beagle everything he had to sort of keep him from getting a quality chance on Holtby. And then you just see Beagle go to the bench, and it's just it encapsulates the Vancouver Canucks situation to a T. And what doesn't help them is Tyler Toffoli leaves and has three of the most dominant games of hockey I may have ever seen in my life. Honestly, he should have had a few last night, but Holtby came up huge, and there was a pass from Perry that Toffoli wasn't quite expecting, but he was leading the league in scoring for about a day, Toffoli, without having a goal in the first few games of the season. You can just tell how much of this revenge tour he's on, and he apparently always does well in Rogers Arena, even when he was a King. Despite being he's a Scarborough guy, he's not even a BC boy. There's just something about that arena, and just the added thing of how this contract situation seem to have gone down. It's so nice to see Tyler Toffoli. I was just, Daniel, you bastard for predicting him coming to Montreal.
That's a great prediction.
It has been so good. But we'll talk about Tyler Myers now. Dying minutes of game 2, the Canadians are winning. At the time, it was 6-3. They get the 7-3 goal Sherratt power play from this penalty. Tyler Myers gets assigned a 5-minute major. After reviewing the hit on the ice, he hits Yoel Armia, concusses him. Armia was having a 4-point night, by the way. By NHL standards, this is not an illegal hit, because the head was not the, quote, principal point of contact. But in the explanation video that player safety provided, kudos, he explained it, but this is the problem here. They acknowledged that there was head contact. And on the broadcast last night, Brian Burke acknowledged that was a big guy hit, and he was actually fine with player safety's judgment, which I couldn't agree with less. I think I'm being quite calm about this, because Armia, he has a concussion. He did not play last night, naturally. And you talk about how important depth is in the Canadians. And you guys know I'm a massive fan of Yoel Armia, so I think I'm being quite calm.
I'm glad you're being calm about it.
Because a player like Tyler Myers comes from the side of Armia. Did Armia have his head down? Okay, so in my opinion, I see Armia does not see this guy coming. Tyler Myers is a giraffe. I think he's like 6'7".
6'7", yeah.
Being a big guy, I think you should have a responsibility. Why in the world a guy his height goes upwards on a hit is beyond me. And the double IHF people give crap to, but the moment there is head contact on a hit, and again, this on the ice, the referees did not just make it that split second. They reviewed the play and decided it was a 5-minute major, and there is head contact. Forget about if it's the principal point of contact. There was contact to the head. And how in the world this does not sort of warrant a suspension? Now, in typical hockey fashion, it was figured out last game. Myers' first shift, Joel Edmondson and him in the warm-up. They have a fight. Great, fantastic. Jonathan Drouin was happy about it. The boys got behind it. That's hockey. I hate it, but it falls into Joel Edmondson's lap to sort of get justice for this team in a hit that we should be eliminating, or just have any sort of policing here on contact to the head.
I 100% agree with that. And I was reading, I didn't get to read the entire thing at the time, but I saw Eric Engels write a piece about you shouldn't be upset at the Department of Player Safety. You should be upset at the way it's worded. Because I believe the way it's worded, and I'd have to double check that, is if the head is the principal contact. That's what the issue is. I fully agree. I 100% agree. The way the hit was, I thought it was suspendable, even if it wasn't necessarily. I thought it was close enough to being the principal contact that you can make the argument. Like it's not. I think a lot of people were saying, well, his head was down. Yeah, but let's look at the context, because I know people don't look at context because that's too difficult to do. I know, but he was battling for the puck. It's not like he was, you walk into the zone and it's a guy lays you out. Well, your head was down. Maybe don't play with your head down.
It's
but
not Mark Stone entering the zone and Dustin Bufflin with his head down.
Right. Like this was, they're on the side of the boards battling for the puck. I think Armia either passed it, the puck got taken off of, I don't remember, but they were still battling for the puck there. And Myers comes in and goes up. Why is he going up? You're exactly right. There's no reason for him to go up. He's like 100 feet tall. Mm-hmm. How does that make sense? I think it was suspendable, and I think the reason it wasn't, I think it should be suspendable. I'm guessing the way it's worded in the document, it has to be primary contact, which I think maybe reword it a little bit. Like I think this argument, and it goes, I think this could be said about a plethora of subjects, not just hitting, it's not one way or the other. That's not how it works. It's not, we need absolute brutality in hockey or we shouldn't have hitting and fighting. Like it's not one or the other. There is a middle ground. And I don't understand what, like, the arguments from people that say, well, if this is a suspendable hit, then hockey's not the same. Well, wait a second here. There's literally, like, I'll say it again. It's freaking science. It's literally science. Is getting hit in the head bad?
Yes.
Okay. I watched UFC last night. I'll tell you what the difference is. The difference is when they sign the contract to do their sport, they are saying, you know what? There's a good chance I'm going to get hit in the head, because that's the point of it. That is literally the point.
Combat sport.
In hockey, when you sign the contract, you are supposed to win games by putting pucks in the back of the net. Is hitting going to happen? Absolutely. I am not saying hitting should be taken out of the game. I'm arguing that there are head hits which are extremely dangerous to people that are not good for the game.
Mm-hmm. Daniel.
Oh, that's hard to follow up.
Sorry.
But no problem. Yeah, I kind of felt too like that elevated, move by Myers was, I think, arguably that was a dirty move. That was something that when it happened in the game, looked like something was out of frustration, out of I wasn't thinking type of thing. And the first thing that kind of stuck out to me, and it's not really the most important thing, but these guys are former teammates. These are guys that both played on Buffalo. They both played on Winnipeg together. They're both in the Evander Kane trade. And the way I kind of saw it was there was that puck battle. There was something where, we're losing 6-3 late in the game. And why would you do something like that? Why would you, first of all, to yourself being out of the game and to further handicap your team like that? And what we said before, this is not a rookie move. This is not an 18-year-old, adjusting to the NHL level. This is a guy that's been there a while. He's drafted in 2008. Tyler Myers knows better than this. And it's just something that it was not a reflex thing. This was something where you just didn't read the play properly and you were out of position. You were not someone that had to be in that scrum. You had the height, you had, you have the bigger hockey stick. You could just join that battle and just try to get something off the board, but he didn't. I actually don't know what he did, like why he would do that.
I don't know, Daniel. It was dumb. It was dumb. It was dangerous, and I should have been suspendable.
Stupid player.
Should have been a suspension.
Don't
We wish our best to your Mia.
Yeah. Though, like spots on the Canadians team right now is just so tight for competition. Especially when you see, as a result of Armia's injury, Corey Perry gets his spot on the third line with Toffoli and Kotkaniemi. And this reminded me of a couple of years ago when Weber came back in November from his massive knee injury and he didn't miss a beat. It's just you kind of see with these veteran players that they can step in. And Corey Perry did not look like he missed a step. He scored because of an O'Leary own goal. Nearly set up Toffoli to score. He was good. And I kind of love it. And I kind of love Corey Perry. Daniel, I love him. He's ours now.
Did anyone else get flashbacks of 2011 last night?
Nope, just you.
No, just me? Okay. Yeah, he was all over the ice last night. That, back checked, he set up his players, people were saying, oh, he had that stupid tripping penalty. But then again, even if it was for a night for me, vintage Corey Perry on display last night, doing his best, doing what he can do, showing what he can contribute to a team. I loved it. Of course, he's not Hart Trophy Corey Perry anymore, but in our hearts he is.
I was worried that he wouldn't be able to keep up with KK and Toffoli. It wasn't an issue. I didn't notice it. He was even making a bit of moves. He got around one of the Canucks defensemen with a move. I'm like, what is happening here? How is 34-year-old Corey Perry man? Depth. I love depth so much.
I think he had the chance because when he was on the Ducks, he was still being paid in a way that he was supposed to be that top guy. But the way they played that, it's adapted more now with the younger guys. But like dragging your opponent through the mud type of play was what the Ducks that was their bread and butter. And when he got to Dallas, I think you had that opportunity now that you could see him fly. You could see him skate. You could see him be more of a guy that is, more well-rounded. And I think that he brought that approach to Montreal.
And it fits in with their, as you're kind of pointing out there, with their play, like style of play. It's kind of like the same thing Josh Anderson does. A little slower, but yeah, I mean, I love him so much. There was almost a chance where, Paul Byron took that Weber slap shot to the leg, and there was a question whether he was going to play. And I think it was Art Van Bossou or Eric Gangos talked about getting into the lineup is so important right now. He played through that. Victor Mete almost played forward in that game last night. And Elliot Friedman actually reports on headlines that teams are keeping an eye on him for if he can't get into the lineup. So that's something to sort of keep an eye on, actually, is Victor Mete's situation with the team, because I'm sure he looks at Alex Romanov and thinks, crap.
You know who needs a left-handed defenseman?
Who's that?
Boston. I know it would never happen. I'll do
it for David Pastrnak.
It'd be something. It'd be something in the city of Montreal if Marc Bergevin traded with Boston. But they need a left defenseman.
Mm-hmm. Only 3 Canadians have not actually scored yet. Every player, I believe, has a point. Even Corey Perry getting into one game. Only 3 players have not scored so far. Paul Byron, Brett Kulak, even though he set up the first goal last night, and Philip Deneau, who...
That's surprising.
Did you guys see how Horvat had the exact same pair of goals in back-to-back nights on the power play? Like right in front of the net, wide open?
Oh,
What's funny is he was Deneau's man.
Huh?
And I'm telling you, he's been good, but the press were reporting that Philip Deneau apparently had turned down a 6-year deal worth $30 million in the offseason. What's really funny about this is Bergevin gave off the impression he was done for the season, and there was nothing, stuff doesn't come out of Montreal, right? And it's just very rich that Deneau's been going on about he wants more. Apparently he wants towards $6 million, like $5.7, $5.8 million. And on this team, he still hasn't scored.
Yeah.
Is it time to bench him?
And Mitch Marner wants $13 million.
Yeah.
We can all dream. We can all dream.
I'm scared that he's losing money now.
It's time to bench Phil Deneau.
No.
Well, I think the thing with Phil Deneau is it's not necessarily just his scoring touch. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen a whole lot of or in-depth watching of Montreal games as I have, because they play at the same time as Toronto. Like I'll have it on my computer, but like I have my earphones in, I have my eyes on the screen. So the thing with Phil Deneau is it's that two-way game that is the impressive part of him. Has that changed?
On even strength, it's fine. But again, on the power play, he kept losing Horvat.
Right.
And could you say that like the amount of pressure the penalty kill has been facing because of all the penalties, that's a problem. But letting the exact same scoring chance happen back-to-back nights.
No.
And how do you leave Bo Horvat that wide open? It's a concern. And like if he wants that money, he has to put up the offensive numbers. For him, like, man, like, I am not 100% bothered by Deneau not scoring 20 goals a year until he brings it into his contract. I want Deneau on this team so badly. But he's going to lose leverage if Kotkaniemi and Suzuki continue to play this well because they picked up right where they left off in the bubble. Yeah. And Jake Evans has worked on his game and his skating to fit into this Canadian system, and he is a coach's player by nature.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't score, he's losing his money right now.
I think this was very strategic. Whoever let this out, very strategic. It's not a coincidence that it's coming out now. Like again, we've had, I think Adam and we were talking about it Friday night. Was it with when we were watching whatever game? And I think, you look back at other contract negotiations, whether it's league or team and player. And I always remember this one thing that Jamie McLennan, my God, said when it was about the Marner negotiations. And he goes, whenever it reaches its bottom point, whenever the worst thing comes out, something ends up happening after that. With Marner, it was announced that, hey, he was offered 7 years at $11 million at the draft, and he didn't take it. A few days later, he signs. We hit the bottom point of PA and the NHL negotiations. A week later, it was settled. So my thing is that happening again, or is this kind of a wake-up call to Philip Deneau to say, hey, I know you don't want to negotiate during the season, but if this is the offer we handed you and you're going to play like this, might want to step it up.
It reminds me of not to the extent yet, because I think Deneau has been a lot more valuable and has been there longer. But remember when Anthony Duclair was given his extension and then he lost leverage when he wanted to represent himself, but also like with the amount of young guys that were coming up for the Senators. And I think it is a similar situation, like you said, Adam, about Phil Deneau, that if I was him, I would have taken that deal already, because look at the way this team has been playing without him having to be a factor in there, at least offensively. That there is so much depth there that, what was once a position of need is becoming a position of strength now for Montreal. And everything just seems to be working or clicking, like whether or not he is going to be there as part of the future. Like I keep thinking of Josh Anderson as a bolter, as something that has been so important to this team, that they have filled so many needs now that they could have, if the worst comes to worst, they could afford to lose Phil Deneau. I know that he is an important two-way center, but it's something that, again, it's something that you don't have to kind of drag on for so long.
One of the storylines to keep an eye on, again, your first place team in the league right now. And next week, we finally get to see them in their red jerseys to start the season. And I'm so excited to see the Bell Center. I saw a tweet asking, what do you imagine the Bell Center would sound like tomorrow if we had fans in the building and they had this start? And you do the player introductions, and you go to Suzuki, you go to Kakinemi, you go to Toffoli, you go to Anderson, and I think if you go off the introductions, it would go Suzuki, Kakinemi, then Anderson right in a row. And then we go to Petrie, and then we go.
Do they have ambient sounds of the Bell Center on YouTube or something we could play?
I don't know. But you know what? They always have such great. No one does the ceremony better than the Bell Center, and it sucks. I wish there was a hockey game for me to go watch, because they're gonna do it right, but I don't.
Yeah. When Alex feels this way, though, he listens to Hall & Oates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for us, it's Coldplay. I miss it so much. All right, looking at the Leafs, they've had a very, very interesting week. First off, looking at the fact that Nick Robertson is on LTIR and Joe Thornton will miss some time from good old Josh Archibald, at least 4 weeks due to a rib injury. It was also reported on headlines last night that apparently the Leafs are looking at forwards to acquire Alex.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, yeah, the Robertson injury is rough, and because I think the one thing I've noticed is that the guys who don't necessarily have confirmed spots on the team, who are fighting for spots, look the best. Mm-hmm. And we saw it last game with Pierre Engvall. We saw it the couple games I think that Robertson got to play. It was, they just looked like they cared. And I'm not saying the other guys didn't necessarily look like they cared. We've talked about it multiple times this season alone about my thoughts on them looking like they care or not. But it's interesting to hear they're going to look for other forwards, because I thought the depth was enough. And I guess there's the whole Travis Boyd thing, and it did seem like maybe that's going to work out. Could potentially be a reason. They're going out to look for another forward. I looked at free agency. There's not a whole lot of names out there. Like, the only one that's really left available that stood out to me was Michael Grabner. I don't know if that's necessarily something they're interested in, but
I mean, if it's not for too much, I wouldn't mind having him back.
Oh no, of course not. I'm thinking there's no way more than league. Like, how much is Michael Grabner can he ask for?
And he's been part of, I don't know, our fandom and our references on the show so much that it would make so much sense. Like, Carter Verhaeghe was traded for him
because he was literally part of the worst team in like modern history of the Leafs.
His speed, penalty kill, I wouldn't mind it. Or how about a Ryan Poehling? No,
I don't know if that's gonna go well. Not because Ryan Poehling's bad. I mean, the reaction to the trade with Montreal. I mean, but I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with that because of the whole quarantine situation. I know what they're trying to do now with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and all the Canadian teams are getting involved with is trying to reduce that 14-day quarantine to, if they're brought in through chartered jet, that are private jet, cool guys, I guess they take private jets, and they quarantine for 7 days with 4 negative tests, that they don't have to do that second week. maybe that will change what the Leafs are willing to go out and do. I don't think it's going to be an impressive move. I think it's just going to be a whatever type trade. With the Thornton injury, I don't think it's as bad as I feel awful saying this, because I think Joe Thornton's biggest attribute to this team is his leadership and the work he does in the room. I think he's still a good player. There's no question about it. But I think for this team right now specifically, his biggest attribute is his leadership on the ice and his leadership in the room, because he was playing on the first line, but I think he can easily just play on the fourth or third line because the Leafs have a guy like Hyman. They have Mikheyev who they can slot up there.
I was going to ask you, who do you see getting on that top line now that Joe's gone?
If Matthews is back today, probably I wouldn't be surprised if it's Hyman and they bring back what they started last year was Hyman, Matthews, Marner, which is unfortunate because I really like that third line of Kerfoot, Hyman, Mikheyev. Yeah. But I want to point out Pierre Engvall 2 nights ago looked like an absolute monster on the ice. Like he looked completely different than the back half of last year.
Which is, if there are guys you're waiting for to be that difference maker in the depth role, it is Engvall. Because what's that magical saying they keep saying about him? He turned into a pumpkin. What's that contract beside?
And even it was the same with Justin Hall. And I think after he signed that contract, I think things kind of went downhill a little bit for him. But as soon as this year started, and you look at that defense core, like I was making an argument that maybe Justin Hall might be your 7th defenseman. Who knows? But I think he's proved himself. Like him and Muzzin, I think that hair is something else, by the way. But he looks better than the way it ended off last season. And just I want to point out another player. I love Ilya Mikheyev.
He's flying to start the season.
Yeah.
I think like it's like he's 100%. He looks like he looked those first few games when at the beginning of last season. And then obviously he got injured, and then that 5-game series that I don't like to talk about. And then now we're here, and it looks like there's guys who needed fresh starts and got them, and it was by far the best thing for them.
It helps that a certain Adam Brooks score as well.
Yeah,
my
Brooksy.
Boy, Adam Brooksy. I love him. I watched him. I didn't tell you guys this, but I was at the Calder Cup finals.
Wow.
When they won. That was really fun. I got to go to Game 7. It was against the Texas Stars.
Yeah. I
got to see future stars Igor Korshakov, Adam Brooks, Carl Grundstrom. You know, I miss Carl Grundstrom, by the way. But yeah, I'm so happy for Adam Brooks. I tweeted about it that this was a guy that was drafted as an overager in the 4th round. Honestly, like outside of Austin Matthews that year, I think that Brooks was probably the 2nd best pick for the Leafs. And I'm just so happy that he finally got the score. I know he had some games last year, but you know, you kind of cheer for those guys. He's like a Brett Leeson kind of guy. You cheer for these guys that get passed over in the draft, and then they come back with like these monster seasons and they make their way to the big show.
All right, Sam Cosentino. Brett Leeson. The Leafs have faced a bit of adversity to start the season. Without Joe Thornton or Austin Matthews in the first game against the Oilers, I believe it was, they pull out. Sorry, no, that was game 2. Game 2. Yeah. Game 1 was the most boring game, and such a boring game. I forgot about it for a second there.
Jake Muzzin's leg scoring the first goal.
I hate the chance I get to watch a Leafs game and then they pull that out. I'm like, are you serious? I took the time to watch you today.
It was a coach's game.
Like
that was something else.
Like it was a coach's game. Yeah, great. I'm so happy. I want both coaches fired after that. That's what you want every game.
You're just like every other Leafs fan. Join the club.
Like Barry Trotz is at least he's the Logs at this point, but at least the Caps, and I just don't want to. But they pull out the winning game 2. But before we get into that and your guys' thoughts on those games, Alex, I feel like you have something to say about Josh Archibald.
I wrote a letter.
Who, by the way, I voted in the 2-on-1 podcast poll on Twitter the player of the game.
More than one person voted for Josh Archibald.
I know.
I'm kind of disappointed.
He had more votes than Connor McDavid in our poll.
I wrote a letter apologizing because I felt bad because he scored an empty netter, even though it was absolutely meaningless. But I wrote a letter anyways because I felt bad. Fine, I'll do it. Dear Josh Archibald, hope all is well during these unsettling times because, COVID and all, whatever. It's Alex from the 2-on-1 podcast. I saw you scored an empty netter against my team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And because of that, I owe you an apology. Yeah, you. Okay. Josh Archibald, I'm sorry. Clearly, I was wrong. One goal changed everything. You aren't a scrub. You aren't some nobody who plays next to Connor McDavid, the greatest player in hockey right now. That could be disputed, but you're Josh freaking Archibald. And damn, you look like you're in the greatest shape of your life, okay? Playing next to McDaddy. Even though I only know you and you don't even know who I am, I hope we can still be friends, despite the mean things I said about you. Please stop scoring against my team. I'll literally do anything to stop that painful memory. I love you.
You love me.
Alex.
Very good. I don't know. I'm still kind of maybe it's me holding back, but
Before
he took Joe Thornton away from us.
I just want to point out everything else I've said about the Edmonton Oilers still stands.
Yes.
My stance on the Edmonton Oilers will not change.
I have one take for this, and I'd like to congratulate Adam Larson on being this year's Andy Green. He's leading the league in blocked shots.
Congratulations. How about stop letting the puck in the net?
I love how. All right. There's a part of me who doesn't even want to ask you guys your thoughts on game one, but I guess I should do it. I have a responsibility to this show. The sort of criticism afterwards was, the Leafs playing the defensive style, but sort of forgetting their offense in their back pocket.
It's the most typical Leafs thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, guys, here's the thing. You can either play offense or you can play defense. I guess we can't do both. Why are the Maple Leafs paying people $11 million to do what? Play one game? What? How does that make sense? And the thing is, maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. I guess I do that sometimes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm human. Damn it. But it's not just this year. It's been the thing pre-Sheldon Keefe, like during Mike Babcock's entire tenure, where it was like, okay, we're going to play the defensive style of game, but our offense is going to lack. And then it's vice versa. Like, can't find the middle ground after 5 years.
It's, you appreciate, I think Connor did not score. If memory serves, Leon Draisaitl managed to get on, but Connor did not. Listen, you appreciate that they're still working on the kinks, right? And
Of course.
I see it a little differently from years before because you kind of really now have, like with the Brody and that, you have a much more complete defensive team in your pocket here. And it's better to be sort of trying to figure this out now than hopefully, I keep wanting to say March because I can't remember when the season's ending anymore. You know what I mean though? Like,
yeah, the
To
playoffs.
be announced because we have so many like postponed games.
It should be like November right now. No, it shouldn't. It should still be October. By the way, last episode, when I was like, is this week 3? It was the end of week 1.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said that in this episode. Like, I swear it was just been week 1.
Oh.
And then you guys kept saying week 2 or 3. I don't know
thought
why.
it was the end of week 2.
The season started the 13th. That episode was the 20th. It was a week. I was like, what happened here? But you know, at least the Leafs, my mic disconnected. But
There we go.
Not week 2. God damn it. Are we in week 3 yet?
We're about to hit
but
Wednesday.
Rebound, and they do win game 2.
Yes. That's
They
the
came
good
together.
thing.
Hold on.
More of a fun game.
For some reason, my speaker went out.
Okay. That's the good thing, is that they rebounded. I still thought the second game, like, it wasn't the most exciting game in the world, which is fine. I'd rather them. I'm trying to think, because there's a part of me that enjoys watching them play really fun hockey, but I really want them to win. Like, I'd be lying if I said, like, I'd rather watch them lose an 8-7 game than watch them win a 2-1 win. No, I'd rather watch them win 2-1. Like, that's ridiculous.
Those higher scoring losses just hurt, because the whole game you're so stressed from it going back and forth. And if you fall, like, if you win, it's like, but if you lose, like, this goddamn, you look back at every play, like, you had your man there, you let this go in there. What's the goalie doing? They are losing high scoring games is the worst feeling.
And that's what the Leafs did when their defense wasn't very good. It was very consistently, they either win or lose high scoring games. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. I'm glad they're working on it now and dealing with it now rather than later. Mm-hmm. But I think my thing was, I know their defense has been good now, but because they have Brody and, Bogosian and the little bit of Lettinen and Muzzin, etc. Mm-hmm. But the whole thing the last 4 years has been, well, wait a second. It can't just be 100% on your defensemen to play defense. Your forwards have to learn that game. And when they do that, I found that we're going to focus on the defensive side of the game. They've seemed to have forgotten the offense. And when you're paid, at the end of the day, when you're paid the amount of money that some of these guys are paid, you can't forget both sides so often. You have to say, hey, I'm playing, I got to remember the defensive side of the game. I have to back check, but I also have to remember I need to produce offensively. And it's a difficult thing to do. I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do, but when you walk into a contract negotiation and say, I deserve 10.8, 11.6 million dollars, you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta produce.
If they're having this kind of performance at game 35, then it's like, okay, let's figure this out.
Right.
I think for now, what I liked was that jolt they had from those guys that they come into the lineup, and what Steve Dangle tweeted about Pierre, like, this guy is fighting for his job. And I think that, it doesn't have to be that desperation every night, but there has to be that passion of wanting to drive the plays. And what Alex said with these other players, that, they need them to step up. They need to be those consistent stars that really they're being paid to be, that we want more out of that. And yeah, again, early in the season, but once you're approaching, like, the 30s, and I hope to God not the 40s,
I think even earlier this year, because it was only a 56 game schedule,
that things to get figured out and that the consistency is there. Like, I agree, Alex. Like, maybe, I don't know, what's our threshold for them? Game 20, 25?
Mm-hmm. I think between 20 and 25, this is how you're going to play the rest of the year.
We should do a clock kind of, or not a clock. We should do like a meter thing for the Habs and the Leafs. Like, all right, expectations for 25 and what it really was, or what they've been able to accomplish.
I think Montreal started the year running, and that's by far the perfect thing any team in the league could do. Now, I mean, you know what? It's not going to backfire. I was going to say they might get tired. Screw that. They're not going to get tired.
Listen, if they're losing outside of the 60 minutes at least, and if you need points, right?
Right.
a similarity you can kind of draw between Montreal and Toronto, and seeing these depth guys work. And I think you just mentioned Daniel, sort of having that competition in the bottom of your lineup. It's not good enough just to have 12 good forwards in this league. You need to have competition in practice, because you got to remind those depth guys that if I have a bad game, it's not just, I could lose my spot here. And you would hope that at the same time, it would then sort of influence higher up in the lineup. Then, if these guys are giving it their all, then when the situation calls for it, those guys are going to go the extra step as well. It's kind of like in years before we criticize Ovechkin, man, block a shot. Doesn't do it during the regular season, but then the moment you get to the playoffs, that's when you give your 100%. And like that competition just helps it all the way up and down the lineup.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because if the third and fourth line guys are, even if they're not performing offensively, but it looks like they give a damn, all eyes are going to be on that top six when they're kind of slacking off. Because why is it that these guys are busting their ass off and you're just prancing around? It's not a good look. And I think you make a good point. And I think about competition in the bottom six. And I think this year has brought something different that past years haven't, which is the taxi squad. Because it allows teams not just to have those up to three guys sitting in the press box, but those 5 or 6 guys in your taxi squad, where it's like, okay, it's kind of interchangeable. Yeah, waivers and all that, but it's something the Leafs maybe didn't necessarily have in the past. It didn't seem, especially last year, like there was a lot of guys who were going to come up from the AHL and steal a spot here and steal a spot there. Whereas this year, you got Engvall, you got, who am I missing? Brooks. Like there's guys there who hey, Robertson, Barabanov, there's guys who can come in, pick up a spot. Oh, that's mine. And it keeps switching. It keeps people on their feet.
Yeah.
There's accountability, I think, everywhere now with a shortened season that, there's no really margin of error.
Right.
Being 2-5 to start a season is bad enough.
Who's 2-5?
This season, I think the Canucks are 2-4 and 2-5. But looking at that, all of a sudden, if you look at it, sort of stretch out in the real season, you're 3 or 4, 8, it's kind of like a few years ago when Columbus started the season 0-5. It's all of a sudden you don't actually have 82 games. All of a sudden your platform is now you have 78 games. And there's just that in the shortened season. You need more. What are each of you expecting for the Leafs going into their first games of the season versus the Flames, who I don't even know what's up with the Flames, to be honest with you. I know from what I've been reading, Gaudreau has looked fantastic.
Markstrom, perfect signing for them.
Oh, did you see his new pads?
Yeah.
Oh, they're fire. Oh, that stuff's they're nice. They're nice.
I laugh when they're like that would have gone well with the flying skate in Vancouver.
Oh, let's get that.
Did you guys know that Calgary's only played 3 games?
Yeah, they had a 5-day. I know that from Haley Sullivan, where she's they had 5 days off.
My God, that's okay.
That when you can.
Yeah. I think this is going to be another interesting team to play against, because I think everyone talks about Calgary and calls them Toronto East because they are Toronto West, because they have these high expectations but haven't really seemed to necessarily figure it out. But I think what they did in the offseason really helped them. Bringing in Markstrom really solidified their goaltending. We don't really know yet, it feels like, what David Riddick is, because it's been a little inconsistent. You lose Brody and Hamonic, you bring in Chris Tanev, who some people have said that's an upgrade over TJ Brody. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think defensively Chris Tanev is a great addition. And then even bringing up depth pieces, a guy like Josh Levo. I just happened to list every single guy they stole from Vancouver. I am so sorry, but Josh Levo, like that's a depth piece that can really help a team. I think I think this is a battle of two very similar teams in how they can play, where it's a lot of offense with some defensive issues.
Here comes the 2-0 game.
I really hope not. Well, maybe I do. As long as it's a Leafs win, that's all.
I think it's going to be 4-2 or 4-3 Toronto.
I think it's going to be 7-6. Lucic gets 4 points.
If Lucic gets 4 points,
you know what I miss? They don't have these too many of these games anymore. But I remember when I was a kid, they always had like 8-6 games.
Who Flames?
that
and
must be
Leafs?
stressful.
No, like there used to be a lot more games like that, like 8-6, like where the narrative of it is a team would always be losing like 4-2 in the second period, and then they end up winning 8-6.
That would I couldn't stand that. Like just too many high scoring games have just been, especially like 10 p.m. starts and 7 goal. Yeah, I don't want that. That's too much for me. Once in
What
a
are people
while,
saying about the NBA? It's like there's more blowouts this year, or everyone's scoring over 120 points every game.
I was listening to the Athletic Hockey Show, and it was the episode with Sean McIndoe this week and Ian Mendes. Am I remembering that right? And they had Jesse Granger on. He sees a lot of the Vegas stuff, and they're talking about betting odds, which I hate. Like, I'm throwing this out there. I hate how much betting odds have been talked about this year. I can't stand them. I don't know why. It's just something in my blood. I don't gamble. I don't drink. I don't smoke. Like I'm a straight edge guy. I can't stand gambling, and like want to hear about the over and that. I'm like, man, you can't argue about cross-checking in the face, but you can talk about over in the pregame. Like I can't stand that. But they were talking about if the odds favorite loses the first game of these back-to-backs, they've come back and just trounced the team in the second half of the night. And it was before the second Montreal game, and then what happened? 7-3 Montreal went over Vancouver. It's been really, really interesting.
A hot take from you.
Keep it out, please. Like I can't stand gambling. I cannot stand it. Especially
I hope you know it's going to
hockey.
get worse.
What about going all in at the deadline? Gambling.
That I like. The deadline is just such a joke, but it's okay. Giving up picks for a good team is great, but then saying I'm going to go with this team just because the odds, especially in hockey, that is just such a crapshoot of a prediction.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun.
So the odds are not in their favor.
Ask Mike.
Oh yeah, because some of the conversation we have with Mike about gambling is just so exciting.
I know. I'm just telling you. There's an adrenaline rush to it. I have a couple of friends who do it more often. I don't do it because it'd be an absolute mess for me.
Go on.
I'm just saying. I think for them, there's an listen. I don't care. I'm just telling you, it's gonna get worse because this is just another way for the NHL to make money.
My only adrenaline.
I know you know that already, though.
It's the thing of my head says I get it. My heart's like this is the worst thing ever, and I don't want to hear Elliot Friedman talking about his Cowboys bet on the broadcast.
Well, he's trying to diversify, talk about other aspects of his life outside of hockey.
I don't want to hear like everyone just man. This is the big problem I have with pregame. And I was gonna bring you were mentioning Tim and Sid. Is there's character there. There's a discussion when pregame. For the NHL, it's like Burke says, all right, that's a clean hit. Why can someone just not challenge it? If I was there, I'd say, Burke, no, it's not. Like
I don't want to challenge Darren Burke. He's so nice to me taking a photo with me.
I think there's a different this is purely my opinion. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes of these type of shows. But I think there's a different feeling when it comes to a pregame and like a Tim and Sid, because I think you're right. If he said that on Tim and Sid or the 2-on-1 podcast or Hockey Central at noon,
in that order, yeah, that's the order.
I think there'd be more of a conversation behind it, but I think because it's a TV production, I don't think they have the time to challenge it.
If you just bring up the thing, like I don't need to watch Sportsnet Central, or I don't need to watch sports. Like I don't need to watch that. Like just give a few more time and just have a bit of color conversation. You know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean.
NBA, I don't watch a lot of that stuff, and sometimes I think it gets a bit too ridiculous. But I would love to see that's why I love Bieksa, because he brings in the personality. I would just you give him a bit more of a slot here. You don't need to have a heart-wrenching, feature about this person's childhood every week, every Saturday. It's a feature curse, by the way. The guy who has the feature always loses. It's a thing I've noticed. Just have some debates or something. We need more of that. It's just, I think it's a fair criticism, and it's just that, and just keep gambling out of my sport, please. Or at least out of my breakdown. If you want to have a segment that's the betting corner for a second, bring in Jesse Granger, talk about it. That's fine. That's what the Athletic did. They have a segment invented once a week, but just keep it out of my general viewing. I don't like it. I don't care about the over. This is a game where we are full contact on sport with sword shoes, and we shoot a piece of rubber at people, and the goalie wears pillow pads. It's ridiculous.
I know, we get it. You don't get the thrill from it.
We've been recording for 2 hours.
My only thrill is before we move on is, well, this was before time, is bring outside food to the movie theater. I did it for the thrill.
You're insane.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this country?
First we're talking about streaming. Now we're talking about bringing food into the outside food from the movies. Are you trying to get our podcast taken down, Daniel?
I learned from my ways.
Your own homemade popcorn.
It's funny. I used to go to Dollarama because the movie theater I used to go to is at North York Center Station.
Okay.
So there's a Dollarama there, and everyone does this. You buy the candy there, and then you go to the theater.
I don't do that.
You don't do that?
No.
You're an honest guy.
I'm not a movie guy, so no. If you ever want candy, if I have a kid, I want a chocolate bar when we're at a convenience store, I'm saying, buddy, that's $7.50. We're gonna go buy the 69-cent one at the dollar store. Don't worry, buddy. We're gonna get there.
Mm-hmm. Or Carlton Cinema, near Ryerson. I used to bring shawarma in. I remember that.
Okay, I'm very curious. I know we have to end the episode, but I'm very curious at how you snuck in shawarma into a movie theater.
Okay, so usually I go
where
after
did
class.
you put it? Where did you put it? Oh, you went after class. There
okay, so this is a thing for people that I actually haven't really talked about this on this hockey podcast, but when we were allowed to go to movie theaters, and Alex knows this, Adam knows this,
invite us.
Commuting during rush hour is horrible.
Oh.
So sometimes when I'm done class at 4 o'clock or 4:30, I'll go watch a movie, and then by the time I'm done, it's time to go home, and it's perfect times around 7:30.
Not inviting your friends.
That is actually one of the smartest things.
We made a plan though, because after you hours of class, you're not gonna go and study right away. I'm too tired for that. I don't have the mental capacity.
They were good, but it's I can't deal, because then you have the 10 to 12 lecture, then the hour off for lunch, and then the 4 or 5 hour lab, and you're I can't do this.
Yeah.
I never thought about that, Daniel. Going to watch a movie if there's rush. Half my classes ended at rush hour.
Yeah, because I can't take it. I can't take it sometimes. The train.
Imagine thinking about this during a pandemic, standing side by side, crammed into a subway car.
I imagine for your shawarma,
scary sight.
If you have a plain bag and you've got your backpack, or if you disguise it with dollar store, I don't think they. Plus, most students work at that. Yeah. So young Dundas, and I doubt they're really.
That's true.
They're not gonna care.
I know. Just to think, he's holding a shawarma bag and he's just walking into the movie theater. Okay, sir, come right on in.
It's technically they're not allowed to they're not allowed to check your bag. You could be if they ask you is that outside food, you could be no, and then you're not allowed to search. Yeah.
That's fair.
It's a random tangent we just had there about my thrills
Daniel,
of not gambling.
Since you don't gamble, do you want to end the show?
All right. Well, guys, we've been going for 2 hours now, and this has been fun.
It has been.
Yes.
Stand up. Sitting down too long.
As a reminder, please remember to check us out at any place you can find your podcast. Doesn't really matter. We just love that we are getting a bit more listeners now. If you have the time and it compels you, please check Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review. Give us 5 stars. Tell us why you love the show, what you'd like to have here and there. Thank you to Voice Ed for always being a great platform for us. Remember to check out Adam's videos When is the next one coming out?
I decided that if there's a series of more than 2 games, I'm going to do a video at the end of them. So by the end of today, there will be the whole one on the Vancouver one.
All right. So check out Adam's series video of the Canucks and the Habs. Check out Alex's blog and check me out on the Eye Opener, which has been confirmed. If you did not see that, please check our last episode.
Also confirmed that Carey Price is still the best goalie in the world.
Yes. And once again, Carey Price is the best goal in the world, according to friend of the show, Will Baldwin.
Per anonymous source.
It's Saturday night.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.